Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Greg Pratica in the central office. I'm with the roadway design office. A 30-something year veteran of roadway design, transportation engineering. Most recently joined the DOT back in 2011. And I've spent a good bit of the time since I got back here to FDOT, because I'm a retread. Spent a good part of the time since I've been back working on the Florida Intersection Design Guide. And so that's what I was asked to describe to you this afternoon. This cover shot here is State Road 7 and Forest Hill Drive in Palm Beach County. It's one of the few I know of that has triple lefts on 3 legs of the intersection. North is toward the upper left corner there, meaning State Road 7 and Forest Hill Drive crossing State Road 7 there. So it's quite a challenge as far as intersection design is concerned. Last update to the Florida Intersection Design Guide was in 2007. There's been a lot of references that have been updated since that time, and there's been a number of new references that have come out that needed to be addressed in an update of the Florida Intersection Design Guide. So speak with you a little bit about what went into each of the chapters and how that was accomplished. For one thing, we have the 2011 AASHTO Green Book, which has just come out in the interim. Of course, there were 2012 updates to the MUTCD, updating the 2009 edition of that publication. Since the update, the HCM 2010 has come out from TRB. We also have a 2012 Traffic Engineering Manual. There is an update to the MUTS Manual as well. It's will be coming around pretty soon. And then the new references that we have include a Highway Safety Manual, which is out in 2010, and that has played quite an influence on the Intersection Design Guide as well. Highway safety is now quantifiable by use of the Highway Safety Manual. It's going to be a very useful tool as we move forward. Another new reference that has come along is the NCHRP 672 report, which FHWA has adopted, and DOT has actually adopted that manual as well. It's all about roundabouts. It's going to be our primary source of design information for roundabouts. So, with those in mind, a lot of the changes that have been made in the Florida Intersection Design Guide are affected by those manuals. I tried to go through and make grammatical and typographical corrections as I went, but I'm sure a few of those have slipped through. In Chapter 2, the Intersection Design Concepts, we've inserted a higher order intersection definition that came from the Highway Safety Manual. It gives a little bit better description of the functional definition versus the geometric definition of an intersection. Inscribed circle diameter was added as a feature. That's certainly a feature specifically with regard to roundabouts. And we also introduced roundabouts as a control mode to be included with signalization, stop control, etc. There are new capacity procedures that are in the HCM that have influenced the intersection design concepts. We've defined the driving task as well in deference to the Highway Safety Manual. consisting of control, guidance, and navigation. There was previously a pretty long narrative on signalization that was contained in Chapter 2. That has been moved over to Chapter 4, which deals all about signalization. And we've added roundabouts as a typical intersection type. Again, the aim here was to kind of mainstream roundabouts as an intersection, since we have so much, since there are so many safety benefits and capacity benefits from installation of a roundabout. Chapter 3, geometric designs. Again, we redefined roundabouts as a basic intersection type to join other conventional intersections. Functional class is a redefinition. There's another redefinition underway by FHWA. Up until recently, a roadway type could be urban or rural, depending upon where it lay in relation to the urban boundary. FHWA is kind of moving away from that and saying wherever there is a roadway that crosses the boundary, it doesn't necessarily change from a rural area, a rural roadway to an urban area or to an urban roadway just because it's moved across that boundary. So we're looking more at a functional class definition that has to do with the typical section of the roadway more so than its location. Access management, we've indicated that roundabouts are good for access management, and that's because they permit U-turns at frequent intervals, and when you're looking at restricting your median openings, that gives access to businesses who might otherwise not have it. Design speed was really taken out of the geometric design of intersections because that's something that's determined during the or as part of the roadway design. Certainly it impacts how you design your intersection, but the discussion on what you use to establish that and stuff was moved out of here. The design vehicles, the WB50 has been removed from the AASHTO Green Book, so that's been removed in favor of the WB40. We've also added in our WB62FL to the AASHTO charts for guidance on turning radii, that type of thing. We did mention in there that roundabouts are a good means for dealing with skews and intersections. As far as the channelizing islands that are defined in the Chapter 3, we've added splitter islands, which are used with roundabouts to that. We've also given guidance on design of triple left turn lanes, since more and more of those are showing up. And our triple lefts, we're saying that you have to accommodate a WB62FL, SU40, and a P vehicle simultaneously. As far as signalization is concerned, certainly the MUTCD has been updated, so we are updating the signalizations chapter to reflect the changes in the MUTCD. Florida Statutes Section 316 is being referenced for the first time in the Intersection Design Guide. It's a very important part of traffic control, and if you're not familiar with it, I'd encourage you to crack it open, take a look at some of it. Of course, with the advent of the 2010 version of the Highway Capacity Manual. Obviously, there are different means for and a different methodology for estimating capacity and estimating your timing and storage. Specifically, now we're estimating our storage requirements using a Q accumulation polygon. That's a very difficult concept to get your head around, but it's fortunately made very simple by the HCS 2010, the software for that. Head placements are different now. The requirement for near side supplemental is 150 to 180 feet for 12-inch lenses and a maximum of 120 feet for 8-inch lenses. It also establishes maximum heights of the bottoms of the signals when you're between 40 and 53 feet from the stop bar. Nowadays, we're also requiring countdown heads for head crossings, and the ADA requirements as far as the heads and the tones and speech and vibrotactile messages that are communicated with the ADA requirements have been reflected there as well. Chapter 7 is out of place, but we'll come back to that. Chapter 5 is comes to signs and markings. Not much has really changed as far as signing and marking is concerned. There's been a few changes in the MUTCD, and certainly roundabouts play a big part in signing and markings. There's some sections in there about marking specifically for roundabouts. Chapter 6 deals with objects and amenities. There's been a lot that's gone on with objects and amenities as far as the plans preparation manuals concerned, so some of those concerns have been addressed here. Landscaping, basically we've established site distance requirements for landscaping that we're highlighting. There's different site distance rules for roundabouts. In some cases, landscaping is very useful to the function of roundabouts, specifically in controlling pedestrians where pedestrians cross, as well as trying to block the straight through view from further up the approach streets, making the roundabout itself more visible. Lighting, not much has changed there, except that lighting is going to be required on all roundabouts. Utilities, it was primarily semantics edits there. And as far as public transit is concerned, FHWA has indicated that arterial highways should be primarily for regional transit. The local transit stops, basically where there are no established routes, we should be discouraging those and try and really maintain the higher speed, longer distance trips on arterial highways. So moving on to roundabouts, Chapter 7 is an entirely new chapter, and it's based on the NCHRP 672, the Roundabouts and Informational Guide. Each section within Chapter 7 deals with each of the chapters within the NCHRP 672 with our Florida-centric preferences, essentially, where there are options given in 672. We're specifying where we want specific guidelines followed. We're also providing screening procedures for consideration of roundabouts, why and why not to use them, and we have further information there on lighting and landscaping at roundabouts. So that essentially concludes the edits to the Florida Intersection Design Guide. I'm putting my contact information back up here on the screen, and I know that we have some questions that have come in, so I'll get to those directly. If you have any other questions, you can go ahead and submit those through the chat, and if you have something to ask me later, again, here's my contact information. Okay, so first question here: is there any guidance on the applicability or safety of roundabouts in proximity to emergency facilities such as a hospital or in areas of elder drivers? I don't think that there's any specific guidance, at least not in the Florida Intersection Design Guide, regarding the applicability or safety of roundabouts, specifically with regard to proximity to emergency facilities or with elder drivers. But these are really kind of non-issues with roundabouts. Roundabouts are certainly safer than conventional intersections. They are a continuous flow intersection. So, in cases where you have emergency vehicles, there's no signal there where an emergency vehicle would have to stop and make sure that the way was clear in all four directions before clearing through. He can just proceed through a roundabout, as following the right-of-way rule. And elder drivers may have some difficulty adjusting to roundabouts, but I wouldn't say that their adjustment period would be any more than the normal driver. Once you've been through one, it's pretty easy to follow what you're supposed to do. There are rules and descriptions of how you should drive through a roundabout now in the Florida driver handbook that the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles gives to everyone as they're applying for license or taking the license test. And certainly roundabouts are being discussed in driver's ed classes, those types of things. So pretty much the word's getting out. Jackie, were there any other questions?
When and where is the guide available?
The Florida Intersection Design Guide should be published early in March. So I'm saying probably first week of March or so we'll have that published.
Okay. And is there a roundabout justification procedure available?
No. As a matter of fact, one of the changes that we've made this year is there is no justification for a roundabout. Roundabout is now being treated as a normal intersection. It's one of the options that we will be looking at when we are developing a project. There are screening procedures, as I mentioned back here. The screening checklist will allow you to look at traffic volumes, that type of thing, and say, well, if the traffic's above a certain level, then you're probably not looking at a roundabout. There's other things to consider, proximity of historical features or various types of situations which might preclude the use of a roundabout.
Okay. Another question that came in says, what software would you recommend for a 3-lane roundabout?
There's a number of software packages out there. Our Chapter 7 on roundabouts indicates for operational analyses you should use, you should use probably HCS as far as an initial operational analysis, looking at it as an isolated intersection. That's just one of the products that's out there. There's various other types which are certainly acceptable. We would prefer to see software that has been developed based on the USA experience with roundabouts. I think there's a product out there that was based on Australian drivers' responses to roundabouts, and they've been around a lot longer in Australia than they have in the US, so their drivers tend to be a little more aggressive, and you find lower delays in roundabouts for those, and we're not quite at that level yet. So, you know, if you're looking at a multi-lane roundabout, you probably want to look toward a product that's been developed based on USA drivers. Specifically with regard to 3-lane roundabouts, right now we're restricting our roundabouts to 2 lanes, except in the case of spiral roundabouts or where you have dual lefts, you can have 3 lanes through a portion of the roundabout, but not all the way around. It probably have 2 lanes for left turn in that type of situation. But in general, we're trying to stay away from 3-lane roundabouts until we have a little more experience with the 2 lanes.
Okay. And another question that came in says, what were the pedestrian and bicycle updates? I'm not sure what that's referring to.
Sure. Yeah, there were pedestrian and bicycle updates to the intersection design guide, and certainly that also stems from the highway capacity manual, which gives now level of service and quality of service for both bicycle and pedestrian traffic. Essentially, bicycle and pedestrian traffic has been integrated with vehicular traffic as part of the traffic stream that must be served. So again, like roundabouts are being mainstreamed, bicycle and pedestrian traffic is also being mainstreamed. Okay, when the Florida Intersection Design Guide is published, you will receive a notification if you're signed up for the contact mailer, and you can register for the contact mailer through a link in the Roadway Design website. So if you want to be notified of all the latest and greatest, sign up for the contact mailer, and like I said, be looking for this publication to be out early March.